One of the biggest celebrity crimes is the murder of rap legend Biggie Smalls, a.k.a. Notorious B.I.G., still unsolved 24 years later.
Police in Los Angeles say witnesses in the death of rapper Notorious B.I.G. are afraid to talk. At a news conference tonight, Los Angeles detectives say they are investigating the possibility that the rapper's death is related to other rap artists.
4 years old, was just starting what was expected to be a promising career in music. But tonight, it's only what could have been. Los Angeles police are investigating the shooting death of rapper Notorious B.I.G., also known as Biggie Smalls. He was gunned down early today.
With access to Biggie's autopsy report and his police file, I'm going to investigate what was happening in his life in the weeks, days, and hours leading up to his death and see whether this sheds new light on how and why he was killed.
That was Danny Boy talking about Biggie's alleged shooter, a guy who used to sound more like a street myth than a real dude. But now, the man said to have pulled the trigger on Biggie has finally stepped out of the shadows, and he's letting it all out. And when I say he's talking, I mean no filter. He even dropped the name of the person who supposedly gave him the order. I've got every jaw-dropping detail right here. Biggie's alleged killer just stood up in court and confessed. The whole place went dead silent. He walked in like he owned the room. Cameras flashing, eyes locked on him, lawyers frozen. Then boom, he said it out loud. He claimed he did it, but not on his own. Before we break down that courtroom bomb, we gotta rewind the tape back to Biggie's final 2 days on this planet. Suddenly, everything he did in those last hours is starting to look way deeper than we ever thought. March 5th, 1997, San Francisco. Biggie hit up JV and Elvis on 107.7, the Doghouse radio show. He was cracking jokes, playing it cool, but if you look close, you could tell the man was drained. Then out of nowhere, he dropped a comment that stopped the whole room cold. He laughed it off quick, threw on that signature smile. But behind it, he was barely holding it together. Biggie had just wrapped his Life After Death album, a project that was about to shake the whole rap world. He'd been bouncing across the country to promo it, barely catching a break. But mentally, the pressure was crushing him. He'd already lost Tupac, a former friend turned rival, to a drive-by, and the paranoia was creeping in. Was he next?
He wasn't a tall man, you know what I mean? Wasn't big, nothing. But to me, he looked like, that wasn't the one to fuck with.
He even said it himself during that same interview, and now it hits different. And this wasn't just some random fear creeping in. This was a real calculated threat hanging over Biggie like a storm cloud. Fast forward to March 8th. Just 3 days later, Biggie showed up at the Soul Train Music Awards in LA. Folks who saw him said he looked chill, even hopeful that the East Coast versus West Coast beef was finally cooling off. During another interview, Biggie straight up said he was done with all the drama, but not everybody wanted peace. That same night, a party went down at the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles, thrown by Vibe magazine. The Vibe, pure Hollywood. Flashing lights, top-tier celebs, music execs, security everywhere. By the early hours of March 9th, the place was packed to the brim. Around 12:30 a.m., the fire marshal shut the whole thing down because the crowd outside was getting out of control. And from that point on, everything moved fast. Puff Daddy's SUV rolled out first, leading the way. Biggie followed close behind in a green Chevy Suburban, riding with Lil Cease, G-Money, and his bodyguard D-Rock. Then came the red lights, the stillness, and then gunshots. Lil Cease later told it raw, every detail, no filter. The whole car dropped down, ducking for cover. Everyone tried to escape the chaos except Biggie. His door wouldn't budge. He'd been shot 4 times. One of those bullets tore straight through his heart. When they made it to the hospital, security guard Gene Deal pulled Biggie out of the truck with his own hands. Deal looked at Puff and yelled, "He's dead!" Puff was in denial. He couldn't process it. None of them could. Just like that, Christopher Wallace, father, husband, rap king, was gone.
It wasn't really a beef to me in the beginning. It just happened to wage into a East Coast, West.
Now here's where it gets straight up disturbing. A special task force was created, led by former LAPD detective Greg Kading, to dig into Biggie's murder. And after years of silence, legal fights, and dead ends, Kading finally confirmed what nobody wanted to admit. There were names, there were witnesses, and one person got full immunity. According to Greg Kading, the alleged trigger man behind Biggie's murder was a guy named Wardell Poochie Faust, a suspected hitman tied to the Bloods and deep in Suge Knight's inner circle. Poochie wasn't just some random street name. This dude was allegedly linked to multiple killings, but that wasn't the real shocker. The real bombshell? Suge's own girlfriend, the woman who supposedly acted as the go-between in this whole setup, was given full immunity to spill what she knew. That immunity deal stayed buried for years until Kading dropped it during a post-retirement interview. And here's the twist that stings: nothing came out of it. Kading said Suge was just too slick with it, never said anything that could nail him directly. So that immunity wasted like it never even happened. But fast forward to this year, and out of nowhere, in a courtroom full of press and chaos, a man stepped forward and dropped a confession that had reporters scrambling to post the news. This wasn't just some random witness. This guy helped plan the whole drive-by, and right there in court, he said 5 chilling words that froze the room. "I'm sorry, I killed Biggie." He didn't hold back. He laid it all out. Said he was hired by someone close to Suge Knight, described the exact car, the timing, the guns used, even mentioned Lil C shouting at some girls from the window just seconds before the shots rang out. That's a detail only someone who was actually there could have known. And get this, he said it had nothing to do with East Coast versus West Coast beef. It was personal, a message, and Biggie, according to him, was just collateral damage. That confession forced investigators to reopen old files, even dig into how badly the LAPD messed up the crime scene. And that leads us right into a bone-chilling claim from Biggie's own circle.
Somebody might try to get me, but I'm just gonna make it hard as
Biggie's mother, Valletta Wallace, didn't sit back quietly. She went to war for justice. She spent millions chasing the truth. She took on the LAPD, accusing them of covering up Biggie's murder and having shady ties to Suge Knight and Death Row Records. And it wasn't just talk, it was all backed by official court filings. But the case, it got tossed, not because it didn't have weight, but because the LAPD refused to settle. With her energy drained and her bank account bleeding, Valletta was forced to step back. Still, that didn't mean she gave up. Years later, she came face to face with Greg Kading, the same guy who cracked the case wide open. Kading said she carried herself with grace. She didn't come looking for revenge, and she just wanted the truth. And now with that courtroom confession out in the open, she might finally have it. But let's rewind one more time. What was Biggie really feeling just hours before it all went down? To find that out, we turned to a forgotten radio interview, the last one he ever gave. And trust, it's not just deep, it's chilling. In it, Biggie hints that he felt watched, hunted, and he said something that nobody really picked up on back then. He knew something was coming, he just didn't know it would come so soon. And here's the part that'll mess with your head. The man who just confessed, he wasn't acting alone. At least 2 others were involved, and they're still out there, walking free. Next up, we dive deep into the pay-for-hit conspiracy, a deadly money trail, and the secret convo Suge Knight was allegedly having while behind bars. We're talking about audio tapes the public's never heard.
sometimes I just rather be dead, because in heaven or hell I could just chill out and I don't have anyone stressing on me.
Recordings that could flip this entire case upside down. The darkest pieces of Biggie's murder are only now creeping into the light, starting with one question that's haunted hip-hop for decades. Who paid to have Biggie taken out? In the streets, there was always one unspoken rule. If you're gonna make a move, keep the money clean and your lips sealed. But when Christopher Wallace was gunned down in cold blood, that silence, it shattered. And what was hiding behind that crack in the silence? Something way darker than some random drive-by or rap feud.
I think Poochie was involved. I think Suge Knight orchestrated it through his, at the time, girlfriend / baby mama. I do believe Poochie was directly involved.
This wasn't about gang beef. It wasn't just about Suge Knight either. This was business. Straight up blood money. A hit set up like a fast food order. Clean, quick, and fully paid. And the money trail, it all starts with one phone call made from inside prison just after Biggie was killed on March 9th, 1997. Suge Knight was locked up at the time for a probation violation. But if you think that stopped the phones from buzzing behind bars, think again. Suge wasn't just talking to his legal team. He was speaking with outside players, people with reach, people like Wardell Poochie Faust, the alleged shooter named by LAPD task force lead Greg Kading. Turns out Suge was allegedly funneling messages through his girlfriend, the same woman Kading says played middleman for the hit. And don't forget, she walked away with full legal immunity. Later on, witness statements backed it up, saying Suge had been using her to pass word to Poochie. And get this, the FBI even flagged a bank transfer that happened the day after Biggie was killed. The account, it wasn't in Suge's name, of course not, but it was traced straight back to someone tight in Suge's inner circle. And in these kinds of crimes, you don't need fingerprints when you got wire transfers, motive, and a timeline that lines up too well. To Suge, Biggie's death wasn't just another loss in the rap world, it was a message. A cold, calculated reminder that just because Tupac was gone didn't mean the war was over. And what makes this even creepier, Suge wasn't exactly trying to keep things low-key. While he never straight up confessed, his prison interviews and audio clips showed a man who knew exactly what he was doing. He spoke in riddles, smug, cryptic, sending threats without ever naming names. In one leaked deposition, Suge was asked if he knew who killed Biggie. His reply, "Maybe I do, maybe I don't, ask Puff." But Diddy, formerly Puff Daddy, has always denied any involvement. According to him, he was nothing more than a man who lost a brother. But behind the headlines, insiders are telling a way messier story. Security guard Gene Deal, the same man who was with Puff and Biggie the night it all went down, gave a version that's nothing like what we've been told. Deal said Puff was warned about a threat in LA. Biggie didn't even want to go to California for the Soul Train Awards, but Puff pushed it, insisted on showing up. According to Deal, what Puff showed later wasn't just grief, it looked a lot like trauma, maybe even guilt. And after Biggie's death, Puff started cutting people off, not just emotionally, but financially too. The moment security staff started working with the cops, Puff distanced himself. No more gigs, no more checks. That silence, it said a lot. Now let's go inside that SUV. Lil Cease, who was riding with Biggie that night, said it felt like any other laid-back LA evening. Girls hanging out, music blasting. Then, out of nowhere, bullets started flying. No warnings, no words, just silence. And when they looked over, Biggie wasn't moving. And what Gene Deal shared next, it broke the room. He told the court something raw, something that stripped away the image of rap invincibility. He pissed on himself. That one line shattered the myth that this was just some hip-hop turf war. This wasn't rap drama. This was murder for hire. Cold, calculated, and professional. Now, 27 years later, one of the men involved says he's done hiding. But why now? Why confess after all these years? Simple, he got tired of looking over his shoulder. The man whose name remains sealed under witness protection came forward and requested a deal, a plea in exchange for immunity on other charges. And guess what? He signed an affidavit confirming it all, now sitting in the hands of internal investigators. The mystery hitman didn't hold back. He gave investigators the full play-by-play, admitted he got paid, confirmed Poochie as the shooter, and even dropped the name of a second accomplice. This other guy, his job was to keep watch and make sure the escape route was clear. According to the signed affidavit, the hitman said, "I was in the car. I watched Poochie raise the piece. He didn't hesitate. He said, 'It's done,' and we dipped." But here's where it gets even wilder. That second accomplice, he's still out there. No arrest, no charges. The only reason we even know about him is because the confession mentioned a street nickname, one that had already popped up in police reports linked to multiple club fights in Compton. So why hasn't law enforcement made a move? Easy, because the confession still isn't official. It's under review. Investigators are busy vetting every word, every claim. But insiders say, if this checks out, it could finally lead to real charges and maybe even bring Suge Knight back into the hot seat. Meanwhile, Valletta Wallace, Biggie's mother, is still fighting. She's been loud, strong, and relentless for decades. She went toe-to-toe with the LAPD, sued them multiple times, and dropped millions trying to force accountability. But she never got justice, not because there wasn't evidence, but because the department seemed more focused on protecting its own image than solving her son's murder. Detective Greg Kading didn't sugarcoat it. He said the family's case barely survived because the LAPD refused to settle, constantly dragging things out. And through all this chaos, fans have kept asking the one question nobody could ever answer. Who really pulled the trigger? Well, now we know, but here's the twist that flips everything. The confessed accomplice said Biggie's hit was just the beginning. He claimed it was a test run. Biggie wasn't supposed to be the only target. Another East Coast rapper was reportedly next, a second hit already in motion, but it got canceled last minute. Too many people watching, too risky. So who is next on that list? We're about to reveal it because this rabbit hole goes deeper. There's one more layer to this story, a connection that links Death Row Records, the LAPD, and a secret surveillance file the public's never seen. You're about to hear what the feds really knew and why they chose to keep it locked away. This wasn't just about Biggie getting caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. This was about control, about silencing voices that were getting too loud, too powerful, too rich for the system to handle. And it didn't stop with Biggie. This thing runs way deeper into the very agencies that were supposed to protect him. It ties into a missing FBI file and a second East Coast rapper who was reportedly next on the hit list just days after Biggie was gunned down. Let's start with the list because yes, there was a real one. During the Wallace family civil lawsuit, an internal LAPD memo was leaked, and what it showed was chilling. According to that document, there was an unofficial hit list with names allegedly targeted by people connected to Death Row Records. On that list, Biggie Smalls, Nas, Busta Rhymes, and one more name blacked out. And this wasn't just wild rumor, it was brought into open court during discovery in the Wallace family's case against both the LAPD and the FBI. But then something shady happened. Key FBI records tied to the murder and connected LAPD case files vanished, gone without a trace. One former informant even testified that Nas was next. The plan was to take him out during a scheduled West Coast tour stop, but he bailed last minute citing security concerns. That one move might have saved his life. Just like that, the trail went ice cold. No follow-ups, no names, no movement, until now. Because the man who just confessed to helping coordinate Biggie's murder dropped another bombshell. Months after the hit on Biggie, he says the same people approached him again. They had another job lined up and wanted him to handle it. E says he backed out. He said he'd already done his part and wanted out of the game. But now, that testimony is sitting in the hands of federal agents, and it's being looked at very seriously. Why? Because it reopens the door to something bigger, a coordinated campaign targeting East Coast rappers. This wasn't just some neighborhood beef. This was about business, about territory. While the public was locked into the glitz of MTV, the Source Awards, and flashy rap rivalries, something sinister was happening behind closed doors. West Coast power players were feeling the pressure. Puff Daddy was blowing up. Biggie had just announced Junior MAFIA's second album. Bad Boy Records was dominating. Meanwhile, Death Row was crumbling. Suge Knight was locked up. Tupac was gone. Dr. Dre had jumped ship. Snoop was looking for an exit. That power shift, it had him cornered. And when people get desperate, they do desperate things. Someone wanted to send a message to stop the takeover and remind the world who really ran the streets. But that plan backfired big time. When Biggie was killed, the industry didn't bow down. It pushed back. And Voletta Wallace wasn't about to be silenced. She took all her pain, all her grief, and poured millions into finding the truth. She sued the LAPD. She brought in her own investigators. She hunted down witnesses. She forced the city into a legal chokehold. But one man she could never get to, Wardell Poochie Faust. He was gunned down in 2003 in Compton, shot 10 times while riding his motorcycle. LAPD called it gang-related, but insiders say it smelled like a cleanup hit. One investigator from the Biggie task force even admitted the timing was way too perfect. People were starting to sweat. Poochie knew too much. And once he was gone, the trail went cold again. And that is until 2024. That's when the anonymous hitman finally came forward. And now the floodgates are wide open. But what about Puff? Puff Daddy, now known as Diddy, has spent decades dodging lawsuits, whispers, and serious accusations. Some folks say he was just a casualty of the chaos. Others, they claim he played both sides of the war. One thing nobody can deny: after Biggie's murder, Puff owned the spotlight. He dropped I'll Be Missing You, turned Bad Boy Records into a mainstream monster, and built a billion-dollar empire off the legacy he shared with Big. But people who were close to it all, they say the price was heavy. He had so much love, man. That's what Gene Deal and Puff's former bodyguard said. Deal ended up getting pushed out, not because he failed at his job, but because he spoke the truth. And that's what this entire story has always been about, the truth. Biggie was just 24 years old, a legend gone way too soon. He left behind 2 kids and a mother who still wakes up every day chasing the closure she never got. Now, almost 30 years later, she might finally be close. So where do things stand right now? Here's the rundown. The hitman has confessed under oath. 2 co-conspirators were named. One is dead, Poochie, and the other still walking free. Suge Knight's girlfriend was given immunity in exchange for cooperation. Nas was reportedly the next target, a hit that never happened because he pulled out last minute. FBI records that could have cracked the case, gone, mysteriously buried or vanished, and Suga still behind bars, still refusing to cooperate. When a reporter recently asked Suge if he knew who shot Biggie, he didn't even blink, just smirked and said, "Ask Puffy." And with that, the spotlight swings back to Diddy, a man who spent years building an empire on top of a tragedy that's never fully been answered. But we've stopped asking who, because now, after all these years, we finally have answers. And just when you thought the story was over, there's one last twist. Before his death, Biggie recorded a final track, a song that never made it onto Life After Death. The label shelved it, said it was too raw, too real, too dangerous to release. But in that track, he allegedly mentioned a black truck creeping past the club. At the time, fans brushed it off like just another verse, but now people are wondering if Big knew exactly what was coming. I just want the truth. That's what Valletta Wallace said during a 2023 interview. And finally, after nearly 3 decades, she might actually have it. Because the man who pulled the trigger, he said it straight. I didn't know him. I didn't hate him. I was just doing what I was paid to do. No vendetta, no personal beef, just a hit. And now that same man says he'll carry the weight of that night for the rest of his life, haunted by a ghost he never even knew. So, did Biggie know Christopher Wallace wasn't naive? He wasn't out here moving reckless? And when those bullets flew, he wasn't shocked? Look close at his final days and it's all there. He wasn't just predicting danger, he was living in it. He felt the walls closing in, he spoke about it, he joked about it, like someone trying to make peace with what was already written. And in one of his last ever interviews, a moment that's barely been touched in mainstream documentaries, Biggie laid it all out. March 5th, 1997, San Francisco, sitting in the studio with the Doghouse crew. Biggie dropped a few unsettling comments. But one line, one quote, it hits the hardest. The room laughed. Biggie cracked a smile. But if you really listen, his tone wasn't lighthearted. It wasn't a joke. His voice dropped low, tired, worn, agitated. He knew. And what made that moment so bone-chilling was what happened next. The host, clearly sensing the shift in energy, leaned in and asked Biggie what had changed in the rap game. Why had things gotten so dangerous? Biggie didn't flinch. He answered calm, like he'd said it to himself 100 times before. And those words, they weren't just metaphor. Biggie truly felt like a marked man, and not just from rival rappers or street beef. The real threat in his eyes was power. He believed there were people behind desks, in offices, pulling strings, who didn't like how big he was becoming. Because by 1997, Biggie wasn't just an artist, he was a machine. He was working with Puff to launch Junior M.A.F.I.A.'s second album. He was expanding into fashion. He was building his own brand under Bad Boy, his own empire. And that made him a threat, not just to Suge Knight or bitter Tupac loyalists, but to executives and hidden figures who had controlled the industry for years from the shadows. There's one moment, one interview clip that never made it to national airwaves, and it proves Biggie wasn't just watching out for shooters. He was watching for snakes in suits. When asked what advice he'd give up-and-coming artists about the industry, Biggie said, "Own your stuff. Don't let no one else eat off your name forever." He wasn't talking about bars or chains. He was talking about royalties, ownership, control. Behind the scenes, Biggie had started working with a private legal team, trying to restructure his publishing deals. Friends close to him said he was looking for a way out of the label trap before most artists even knew what a 360 deal was. And here's a little known fact. Sean Puff Daddy Combs reportedly owned a major cut of Biggie's publishing catalog. Insiders from inside Bad Boy have claimed that Biggie was planning to renegotiate everything, to shift his creative rights into a trust for his kids. And while Diddy and Bad Boy have never publicly confirmed it, some believe this could explain why certain songs were shelved or buried altogether after Biggie's death. There's even word of unreleased tracks on full studio sessions with DJ Premier recorded in secret just weeks before the end. But not every track made it onto the final cut. Some were shelved, others vanished completely. And then there's the Faith Evans chapter. Most fans know the surface. Biggie and Faith rushed into marriage, clashed in public, and had more than their share of drama. But what few people know is that in the weeks before his death, Biggie was trying to make things right. He wasn't just chasing peace, he was trying to repair his legacy. During that now infamous Doghouse interview, Biggie admitted something most missed. "I messed up, but I'm trying to fix it. For real." That wasn't just personal, that was future talk. Biggie wasn't just thinking about hits. He was thinking about time, something he didn't have much of left. Now let's head back to his final night, the party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. There's one account almost never quoted, but it changes everything. Michelle, a staff member working the VIP entrance that night, told investigators Biggie looked tense, real tense. She said he kept checking in. Who's outside? Who just came in? Who left? He wasn't paranoid. He was aware. Michelle even said Biggie asked for extra security to be posted outside his SUV before they pulled off. But he didn't get it. Instead of backup, he got reassurance, told it was all good, but he didn't feel safe. He was overruled. And here's the part that nobody ever talks about. Biggie had changed hotels. He was originally staying at the Four Seasons, but 2 days before the shooting, he suddenly switched to the Beverly Hills Hotel. Official reason? Booking issues. But insiders now claim that's a cover story. The real reason? A threatening phone call. According to someone in Biggie's circle, he picked up the call, listened in silence, nodded once, and that was it. Right after he told them he wanted to move hotels. The number? Unlisted. Never traced. But that wasn't the only sign something was wrong. Another man who saw the danger up close was Eugene Big Gene Deal, Puff's former security. In a later interview, not shown in earlier parts of this expose, Deal gave a bone-deep account of the ride home. "When we left that party, I was scanning every rooftop, and we knew someone was out there watching. We just didn't know who." Gene's gut was right, and the trauma, it never left him. To this day, he says he's still haunted, not just by the violence, but by the silence that came after. "I hate to be like that," he said, "because it's hard to come back from that." And maybe he never did. So where does that leave us? Biggie knew he was being watched. He said it, he showed it. In his final interviews, he gave off signs trying to tie up loose ends, make peace, and protect his legacy. But when the bullets came, all of that, the unfinished tracks, the private deals, the quiet plans, died with him. This wasn't just a hit, it was a silencing. So why does this still matter today? Because when no one's left to speak, history lies. And Biggie's voice, even though he's gone, left clues everywhere. In his bars, in his interviews, in the way he moved in those final days, he was trying to warn us. The real question is, were we paying attention? Christopher Wallace saw it coming, maybe not the exact time, maybe not the exact corner, but in his music, in his tone, in his eyes, he knew the end was near. He felt it. He said it. He lived like a man who knew every day could be his last. Now, 27 years later, the truth is finally crawling out of the shadows. Not because the system stepped up, not because the music industry demanded justice, but because of one unshakable force: his mother. Voletta Wallace never stopped. She spent years fighting, investigating, digging through lies, all to bring the truth into the light. And now, with this hitman's confession and the puzzle pieces finally clicking together, maybe, just maybe, Biggie can finally rest. But the story doesn't end here. We've got more deep dives, more secrets to uncover, and more untold stories that need to be heard. If this content hit you hard, if you learned something, or if you're one of the real ones keeping Biggie's legacy alive, then do us a solid. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who needs to know the truth, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. Was Biggie warning us all along? Much love, and we'll see you in the next one.